When you think of U.S. parks with the best coaster lineup, which park comes to your mind? Is it Cedar Point? Is it Six Flags Magic Mountain? Do you prefer Dollywood or Silver Dollar City because not just the coasters, but also the whole atmosphere and environment? Do you think Hershey Park is in that conversation? Or is it Kings Island? Well, stay tuned because today we're going to be ranking all the coasters at one of the best and most well-rounded coaster lineups in the country, Kings Island. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Kings Island is a large-scale park located just north of Cincinnati in Mason or Kings Mills, Ohio. According to the data from 2019, which was the last normal year before the pandemic, Kings Island had the 16th highest attendance with 3,521,000. The impressive part is Cedar Point and Canada's Wonderland are the only parks that are seasonal that outperform Kings Island. If Kings Island was open every day of the year, it would be the 10th highest attendance, with only Disney and Universal parks having higher attendance. So Kings Island is a great park located in one of the two best states for coasters. You can make an argument, is it Ohio or Florida that has the best coasters in the country? This year, Kings Island was celebrating its 50th year anniversary as the park officially opened to the public in 1972. Cincinnati previously had a park called Coney Island that had a rich history dating back to the mid-1800s. The park dealt with a lot of constant flooding from the Ohio River, which then sparked a new idea for a theme park. The Taft Broadcasting Company officially broke ground on the new theme park in 1970 and gave the park a name, Kings Island, because it was built in the town of Kings Mills, and the iconic Eiffel Tower began construction in 1971. When Kings Island officially opened in 1972, it consisted of around 60 rides, with the most iconic being the new Racer dueling wooden coasters. Today, Kings Island continues to grow and expand as they now consist of over 100 rides and 14 coasters. So let's begin with the rankings. Before we begin with the rankings, I want to mention that these rankings were created by you, as about 50 people participated in the survey, and I'm very grateful for that, and we will be doing more of these in the future. At the end, I will discuss which coasters I would place differently from my personal rankings compared to how you, the viewers, ranked it. Now, the least favorite coaster in the park is no surprise, as it is the Great Pumpkin Coaster. This coaster opened in 1992, and you can only ride on it if you have a child. This is the only coaster in the park that I have not been on, so I can't give my overall thoughts other than it's your traditional beginning coaster for younger kids. Next on the list, receiving 60% of the vote for 13th place, is the Flying Ace Aerial Chase. Flying Ace is a Vekoma suspended family coaster that opened in 2001. Now, aesthetically, this ride is beautiful with the cool support structure. I've only been on this coaster one time, and I rode in the front row, and I really enjoyed the experience. Now, the layout is fun with the non-traditional helix look for the first drop. The coaster does reach speeds in the low 30 miles per hour, so it is a perfect step-up coaster for your kids from the Pumpkin Coaster. Now, it is on the rougher end, as the older Vekoma coaster styles do not have the most comfortable restraints, and there's a bit of a rattle. Luckily, none of that really matters when you're going just above 30 miles per hour, so this is definitely a coaster I would recommend to the younger audience. At 12 on the list is the Woodstock Express. Woodstock Express is a surprisingly fun family wooden coaster. The Woodstock Express also debuted the opening year of Kings Island in 1972, and this coaster was designed by John C. Allen, who is a legendary wooden coaster designer responsible for designing a lot of classic wooden coasters such as Blue Streak, Screaming Eagle, the Racer, which obviously we talked about previously was at Kings Island, and the Racer 75, which is at Kings Dominion, and Great American Scream Machine. Woodstock Express has a unique blue coloring for the track and its supports. It is a surprisingly smooth ride, as it is a max height of 39 feet and it reaches a max speed of 35 miles per hour. The coaster trains are quite small, so it might be a tough fit for you and another rider if you're both trying to ride on the same row. I was pleasantly surprised with this ride when I rode it for the first time last year, and after riding the clone at Carowinds, I definitely think this version is smoother and offers better ride. Next on the list at number 11 is Adventure Express. This coaster is a mine train coaster built by Arrow in 1991. Adventure Express is a really fun coaster as it is a lot smoother than most other mine trains. To me, it's my personal second favorite mine train behind Thunderation at Silver Dollar City. But back to Adventure Express. This coaster offers a strong layout and is an awesome surprising at the end. I'm not going to ruin that for you if you don't know what I'm talking about. Now, where this ride really excels is at night. My goodness, is this a great night ride, as it is one of the best night rides in the park. So one thing that is amazing about the design of most of the coasters at Kings Island is they go away from the paths and into kind of the woods and the wilderness. So the only area of the park that you can actually see any of the layout is for Adventure Express is if you're on Banshee. And who's looking at Adventure Express when you're about to go down that big drop on Banshee, right? Now, operations are really great at this park overall, and especially on this ride too, as they always run 2 trains and they get riders in and out quick. Now, to start the top 10, we have Backlot Stunt Coaster, as it received the highest percentage of votes for 10th place. I think the theming around this coaster is great, as it provides a coaster experience that is so different from anything else in the park. So this Premier Rides coaster has riders sitting in smaller trains as it's supposed to resemble a car. You experience one main launch right after exiting the station. I believe this coaster was originally themed around the movie Italian Job because Kings Island at the time was owned by Paramount. Once you launch, you experience a surprisingly forceful helix as you head up what looks like a parking structure. Then the rest of the layout is really fun and a good ride for families. This coaster does give some really good views from the exit, as you can see the ending hill where it looks like the car flies through a billboard or the side of a building. You can also get some good views of the entire layout from the Eiffel Tower observation deck. If this is the 10th best coaster in the park, you know it's a great coaster lineup. Number 9 on the list is one that honestly messed me up a bit the first time I rode it, and that's Invertigo. Invertigo is a Vekoma suspended boomerang coaster, and it's surprisingly intense. Now, this is a unique boomerang coaster as you have the option of facing either direction, as your riding experience is completely different based on whether you start the ride going backwards or forward. This also allows for more riders per hour as the trains can hold more guests. Since it is a boomerang coaster and you can only run one train at a time, you need to maximize the time and operations to get the most riders per hour. On Kings Island website, it says the ride time is 2 minutes, but most of that is going up the 2 lift hills. And Vertigo has 3 inversions in its layout, a cobra roll right after the station, and a traditional loop. But the ride actually inverts 6 times as you experience the ride going forward and then backwards, or backwards and then forwards, depending on which direction you're facing to begin the ride. Waiting in the station reminds me of being in Chicago or in New York and seeing an express subway fly by. The force and wind is so powerful and honestly a really cool experience as the coaster train just flies through the station. Now, the coaster did mess with me a bit when I rode this, so that's why last time I went to Kings Island I chose to not ride this coaster, and I don't know what the reasoning was, but hopefully I will go on this again and I'll enjoy the coaster a little bit better. Now, the next one on my list is one that people seem to really like or dislike, and the Bat comes in at number 8. I personally really like the Bat. The Bat is an aero-suspended coaster that is positioned way out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, the queue to get to the Bat is pretty insane. Seriously, the walk to get out there is crazy. The position in which it's located, though, really makes for a great riding experience as you're surrounded by trees and feel so secluded from the rest of the park. Not to mention how unique the cars are for this coaster. You sit in a car that is floating from the track above instead of below. This coaster is not the original Bat, as that was built in the early 80s by Aerodynamics, nor is it in the same position, as the original one was located where Vortex once stood. Now, the Bat's original history has been well documented as having major issues when it opened, but Aero definitely seemed to figure it out the second time around. I believe there are less than 10 of these coaster models still operating in the world, and it's a shame to see as they honestly are really fun. This coaster is not meant to be looked at as some kind of ultra thrilling coaster. It serves its purpose and is yet another great coaster that the whole family can enjoy. Next on the list at number 7 is one of the most iconic wooden coaster still running today, and that is the Racer. The Racer has your traditional out and back layout, but with a twist. You race another train. So the Racer has a blue train and a red train, each on their own layout. This coaster has been retracked over the previous few years and is a lot smoother now because of it, and man, there is some surprisingly good airtime and quality airtime moments on this coaster, especially in the second half when you're returning to the station. This coaster overall is solid, and it becomes a must ride at night when everything's light up and when it's racing. The views you get of Orion as you're going up the lift hill are just beautiful. When I was at Kings Island in October, I rode the blue train and the other part of my group was on the red train, and it was a blast racing them. A lot of older coasters you might just ride to say, hey, I've got the credit, but this coaster is truly a masterpiece and definitely a classic. The next coaster I feel gets a lot of mixed reviews as well, and that is Flight of Fear. Flight of Fear is definitely a unique experience as a coaster that the rest of the park does not offer. This Premier Rides launch coaster has multiple clones that have been built around the country. The other Flight of Fear at King's Dominion is an exact clone in terms of the layout and the whole building, whereas the other models at Six Flags parks are all outdoors. Once you enter the queue and go inside, it really prepares you for the coaster as everything's kind of dark and dreary and gloom, and then there's this massive UFO that you walk through that the station is located in. Now let's talk about the coaster trains. Oh my goodness, are these coaster trains so uncomfortable to get in. But I will say, I kind of relate it to that couch that's like really tough to sit down on, but once you do, you kind of just sink into it and it's comfortable, right? And it's hard to get up afterwards, but it's really comfortable while you're sitting down. That is honestly what these coaster trains are like, is they're actually pretty comfortable. But the hard part is sitting down and getting up, as it's almost like you're kind of leaned back in a sense. It's kind of interesting and hard to explain.
Aw, Cedar, do you guys want to count down or just be like, you know?
Now the ride experience is absolutely great as you're launched to 60 miles per hour directly out of the station. There's really no warning. There are multiple inversions, so I see this as a slightly more intense rock and roller coaster. It is not pitch dark, so you can faintly see the outline of the track, and that is one major flaw, as I would prefer more if it's pitch dark. The other flaw this coaster has is the mid-course brake run. Now I believe the ones at the Six Flags parks don't have that mid-course, but this one does, and it really slows down the coaster and definitely slows it down the rest of the layout. I will say though, thankfully this coaster does not slam on the brakes at the end like Rock and Roller Coaster does, but this is definitely a must ride. Now I have heard if you are the last ride of the night, you can request for lights on. I personally wouldn't want to make this my last ride of the park, and if I did, I wouldn't want to ride with the lights on. So that's just my opinion, but I have heard that that's an option that you can offer or ask for. Now I think that one thing most people can agree on who've been to Kings Island is that all their coasters are really good in quality, but there's definitely a big gap between the top 5 and everybody else. Now to be fair, most parks have that. Carowinds has a massive drop after their top 4. I'd even make an argument there's a really big drop after their top 2. Cedar Point does have a drop off after their top 5 as well, but to me all 5 of these coasters at Kings Island are elite coasters. Number 5 on the list, voted by you, is the Beast. The Beast is an absolute beast of a coaster. Is this the most thrilling wooden coaster? No. Does it offer some crazy unique elements that set it apart? Not really, other than that final helix at the end. But the best part is that it's so nostalgic, and it has been in the park for almost 45 years. As you're riding this coaster, you'll find yourself thinking at times, how in the world did they build this so long ago? El Toro Orion did an amazing video about this coaster as to why it gets so much hate and how it's got so much of a love-hate relationship with it. So the link is below if you want to check that out. But he literally talked about how the Beast is a backyard coaster. This coaster was constructed in-house and not by an independent company at the time. Now the developer of the coaster did move on to create his own company called the Den Corporation, but this coaster is a work of art. They had to manually survey the land, and they created all of the designs, as this was before computers started playing a big role in coaster design. The Beast lasts almost 5 minutes as you traverse through the woods. Now the ride lacks airtime and really any overall intense elements in the first half, But this section of the ride is good during the day, but man does it stand out at night. This is truly the only ride in the park at night that is completely dark because you are completely surrounded by trees. Both times I've been to Kings Island at night, it has been a full moon, so I wonder how much darker the ride even looks if it's a crescent moon. There are moments on this coaster that some people knock that to me honestly are great, because there are these awkward moments where it's slightly banked awkwardly than you might expect, but that to me is just the charm of it being an older coaster. Now the best part of the ride is the intense double helix at the end. As you drop off the second lift hill, the ride suddenly banks about 45 degrees or so to the left, and this whole time you're thinking there's no way we're about to enter this helix going this fast, especially in the front row at night, is legit terrifying as you head into that helix. It is insane that they designed that 45 years ago and it stands the test of time today. Overall, since the retracking, the Beast is really smooth, and row 17 is the magic seat. That is the middle row in the back car, so you get the speed and intensity being the back, but the smoothness of being more up front since you are on a non-wheel row. I heard somebody describe this ride as the Beast going on a hunt, as the ride just seems to get more and more intense as it goes on, with the last element being the most intense. Definitely an iconic coaster, and night rides are a must if you're visiting Kings Island. Now at number 4 on the list, which won 38% of the vote, which was 20% more than the Beast for this spot, is Banshee. Banshee is my favorite invert, as it has some truly intense and unique elements that not many other inverts have. But let's start with the view. This hands down is the most impressive coaster design in terms of views in the park, and maybe of any coaster I've seen. The plaza is absolutely beautiful, as you have amazing views of the insane drop and iconic dive loop, and then the loop over the lift hill. Now Banshee sits on the same plot of land that the Son of Beast once occupied, which thankfully I never got to go on that coaster, but Banshee inverts riders 7 times over a ride time that lasts around a minute from the first drop. Some of the elements are traditional ones that you see on other inverts like the 0G roll or the teardrop vertical loops, but Banshee also has a dive loop, which I believe they're the only invert with one, and please correct me if I'm wrong on that. They have a pretzel knot, which is essentially a unique dive loop, then a unique Immelman where you exit in the direction with which you entered the dive loop. And to me, the best element on this coaster is the slow barrel roll at the end. This element feels very similar to how it does on a wing coaster, and man, I wish every invert had this element. Banshee also has one of the steepest and most intense first drops that you'll find on an invert. Is that drop and then that dive into the loop is just an amazing set of elements. Now for the top 3. I was surprised at the voting for all 3 of these coasters. Coming in at third is Orion. I personally love Orion as it is a Giga coaster. Yes, you heard me right. It's a Giga. The drop's 300 feet. It has arguably one of the best first drops on any coaster in the world. The drop seems to take forever, especially in the front row, and honestly, because of how you're looking in the view, it seems steeper than 90 degrees, even though it isn't. Now, I think a lot of the hate or disappointment for the ride is that after Fury, we all expected B&M to innovate even more and create an even maybe longer design with some different elements. Would it have been better if Orion had been longer and had some of Fury's elements? Of course, but that does not mean Orion's a bad ride. Orion's best moment after the drop is the third hill that has the turnaround that looks to be the reverse of Fury's treble clef turnaround. Now you have a quick speed hill before the best and really only floater airtime hill of the ride. In my opinion, this ride is way better in the front, as I believe is true with all Giga coasters. Now you might disagree with me, but my reasoning is that there are way more positive G-forces felt at the bottom of the first hill and the back rows. And I particularly don't enjoy that as much as I enjoy negative Gs, but also just feeling the pure speed of going 91 miles per hour and the wind, the full force of the wind hitting you in the face. Now also, the trim kills the floater airtime in the back row on the one good airtime hill on Orion. Orion is still only one of 10 coasters in the world to top 90 miles per hour. So was it a disappointment? Yeah, I think we definitely expected more, but this is still a phenomenal ride, and it's still an elite coaster. Now on to the top 2, and receiving 40% of the vote for number 2, which was 19 more than Orion did, was Diamondback. Now Diamondback is just pure floater airtime, and boy am I here for it. The layout and pacing is great. A lot of people complained about a rattle, but I have had 10 rides on Diamondback in my 3 visits, and I've yet to feel a rattle once. This to me is one of the better hypercoasters, as there are 5 major floater airtime hills with 3 smaller, you could probably classify them as ejector airtime hills near the end, especially one right before you dive into the splashdown. Be careful on a cold day in the back row, as the splashdown can get your arms wet. I just love the restraints on B&M Hypers and Giga Coasters, as I feel you're so free and not stapled into your seat. In my opinion, the best row to ride Diamondback is in the last row, so row 16. I think because of the longer trains, the front seems to be negatively impacted from having to drag the rest of the train over the massive airtime hills, so I don't feel like the airtime or ride experience is as good in the front. Don't get me wrong, it's still a really good coaster in the front, but I think this one is more enjoyable if you sit near the back. Now on to number 1 is Mystic Timbers. Now Mystic Timbers received almost 50% of the vote for first place, which was 15% more than any of the other coasters. Mystic Timbers is my personal number 2 overall coaster of any coaster that I've been on, because man, it packs a massive punch. Don't let the 105-foot drop and speed of 58 miles per hour fool you. This ride is incredibly intense, and there's no way this coaster only goes 58 miles per hour. The coaster trains are very comfortable, which is needed as this coaster purposefully throws you around. Once you have the first bank drop, you feel some intense laterals in the back row at the bottom of the first hill. Then you have an airtime hill taking you under the lift hill and into the woods. This is where it really kicks into high gear, as the rest of the ride is ejector airtime after ejector airtime with a few floater hills mixed in. I don't think this coaster gets more than 20 feet off the ground the rest of the ride, which is what helps keep the speed. I like describing this coaster in 2 ways. It was designed to make you feel like you've been through a fight, so it is super smooth, but any roughness it has is not because the coaster is flat out rough, it's because it was designed that way. It's like with this coaster, GCI said, alright, we're going to take what everybody loves most about the Voyage, which is the second part of the Voyage, and we're going to make all that this coaster. And boy did they succeed. The only disappointing thing is at night you can see lights from the service roads or the water ride that passes over, so it's not a truly dark experience like I was hoping for, but either way, still an excellent night ride. So now the question becomes, where do I differ on my rankings? And my answer is not really much at all. I was actually really surprised with how this ended up. Now I would have put in Vertigo at number 11 instead of 9, but that's because I didn't have the greatest experience on it. I would have then put Adventure Express at number 10 and Backlot Stunt Coaster at 9. Kings Island to me has the best coaster lineup of any park that I've been to, because there is not a single bad coaster in the park. Even the smaller family coasters are a lot of fun. So what do you think about the rankings and outcome of the poll? What are your thoughts on anything I've said? Is there another park that you'd like me to create a poll for and do a video on? Make sure to let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day.